Daniel Harper stood at the altar of the Riverside Gardens venue surrounded by 200 guests celebrating their 15th anniversary, watching his wife Amanda announce she was divorcing him right there, right then, to marry his successful business partner Derek Chen, who was standing in the crowd with a smug smile. But what Amanda didn't know was that Daniel's parents had died in a car accident 3 days earlier and left him a $550 million empire that the lawyers were waiting to reveal to him that very week. Daniel, a humble architect who'd spent 15 years building a quiet life with the woman he adored, believed he'd lost everything when his wife divorced him in front of their friends, family, and colleagues at what was supposed to be a vow renewal ceremony, completely unaware that he'd just inherited not only his parents' fortune, but also the controlling shares in the architecture firm where Derek worked. Amanda married Derek in a lavish ceremony 6 weeks later, posting every detail on social media while Daniel grieved his parents and his marriage in silence. But neither his ex-wife nor his former partner knew that Daniel now owned 40% of Chen and Associates Architecture, Derek's self-made company that was actually built on Daniel's parents' initial investment. What happens when a man publicly humiliated discovers he holds the power to destroy everyone who betrayed him? What did Daniel do when he inherited $550 million that would crush his ex-wife so completely at her new wedding that she'd never recover? And why would a betrayal so public, a divorce so calculated, and a business partner's ultimate deception lead to a reckoning so devastating it would leave everyone who witnessed it speechless? Daniel Harper adjusted his tie for the third time, hands trembling slightly as he stood beneath the white archway decorated with Amanda's favorite peonies. 15 years. 15 years of marriage, and here they were at Riverside Gardens, the same venue where they'd gotten married, surrounded by everyone they knew. Amanda had insisted on renewing their vows, had spent months planning every detail, had told him it was important to recommit publicly to their love. He'd thought it was romantic, now looking at her face as she stood across from him in her stunning white dress. He saw something he couldn't quite name, something cold beneath her smile. "Friends and family," Amanda began, her voice clear and strong, not waiting for the officiant. "Thank you for being here today. I asked you all to come because I wanted witnesses to something important." Daniel smiled, assuming this was part of her speech about their journey together. But Amanda's eyes weren't warm. They were hard, determined, final. 15 years ago, I married Daniel Harper thinking he was going to be something. I married potential, ambition, drive. I married the man who promised me he'd build an empire. She paused and Daniel's smile faltered. But instead, I got a man content with small projects, modest dreams, and a life of comfortable mediocrity. The crowd stirred. Daniel's chest tightened. This wasn't the renewal speech they'd rehearsed. I've spent 15 years waiting for him to become the man I needed, waiting for him to want more, to be more, to give me the life I deserved. Amanda's voice grew stronger. But he never did, and I'm done waiting. Daniel found his voice. "Amanda, what are you?" "I'm divorcing you, Daniel. Right here, right now, in front of everyone who watched us make promises we both know you couldn't keep." She pulled papers from beneath her bouquet. "These are already signed by my lawyer. You just need to sign them." The world tilted. Daniel heard gasps, whispers, someone's shocked cry. His mother's sister, Aunt Carol, started to stand, but her husband pulled her back down. "There's someone else," Amanda continued and turned to the crowd. "Derek, come up here." Derek Chen emerged from the third row, impossibly handsome in his tailored suit, wearing the confident smile of a man who'd already won. Daniel's business partner, his friend of 10 years, the man whose architecture firm had grown from startup to industry leader, while Daniel's small independent practice stayed deliberately modest. Derek took Amanda's hand. She leaned into him with practiced ease. "Derek Chen is everything I needed Daniel to be," Amanda said. "Ambitious, successful, willing to do whatever it takes to win. He's built an empire. He's given me the life I always wanted. And I'm going to marry him." Daniel's voice came out strangled. "You've been, how long?" 2 years, Derek said, speaking for the first time, his tone almost apologetic but his eyes triumphant. "I'm sorry, man. We tried to fight it. But Amanda deserves someone on her level. You've always been content with small. She needs someone who thinks big. Daniel looked at the faces staring at him. His colleagues from the firm he'd worked at before going independent. Amanda's parents, who looked unsurprised. His own friends, shocked and confused. The vendors, the photographers, everyone capturing this moment. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. "Sign the papers, Daniel," Amanda said, gentler now, as if she were doing him a favor. "Let's end this cleanly. I've already moved my things out. The apartment is yours. I'm not asking for alimony, just sign and we can all move forward." "Why?" Daniel whispered. "Why like this? Why here?" "Because you needed to understand. I needed you to see, in front of everyone, that this isn't just me leaving. It's everyone seeing that I outgrew you, that you weren't enough. I needed that clarity. We both did." The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Not just divorce, but public execution of his worth. Not just betrayal, but humiliation as performance art. His phone buzzed again, and again. Daniel pulled it out, seeing his lawyer's name. "I need to take this." "Now!" Amanda laughed. "Really? This is exactly what I mean. Always putting off the important things." "My parents died," Daniel said quietly, and the laughter died. 3 days ago, car accident. I've been planning their funeral while planning the ceremony. While you were planning this. Amanda's face shifted, but not to sympathy, to calculation, to concern about how this looked. "Daniel, I need to take this call. About their estate." He walked away from the altar, away from the gasps and whispers, and answered. "David?" His parents' lawyer, David Morrison, sounded shaken. "Daniel, I've been trying to reach you. I know about the ceremony today. I'm so sorry, but this can't wait. Your parents' will reading is scheduled for tomorrow morning. There are matters that require immediate attention. Your presence is mandatory. Can't it wait until after the funeral? The funeral is being handled by their estate managers. Daniel, your parents left very specific instructions. You need to come to the office tomorrow at 9. Trust me." Daniel hung up and walked back to the altar. Amanda had stepped down, was being comforted by Derek, both of them whispering. When they saw him, they straightened. "I'll sign," Daniel said, his voice flat. "Give me the papers." Amanda's relief was visible. She handed them over with a pen. Daniel signed without reading them, his hands steady now. Shock was a strange anesthetic. "Thank you," Amanda said. "This is better for both of us. You'll see." Daniel looked at Derek. "The Jenkins project we were collaborating on? We'll buy you out of your share. Fair market value. No hard feelings professionally." "Of course." Daniel's laugh was hollow. "No hard feelings." He handed the papers back to Amanda, looked at the crowd one last time, and walked out of Riverside Gardens alone. Behind him, he heard Amanda's voice, bright and recovered. "Well, that's done. Now let's have a party anyway. Celebrate new beginnings." Some people cheered. Some people left. Daniel didn't look back to see which. Daniel sat in his car in the parking lot for an hour, unable to drive, unable to think. His phone filled with messages, some sympathetic, some curious, some gleefully sharing the video that was apparently already circulating online. Architect gets publicly divorced at vow renewal. His best friend from college, Marcus, called. "I'm coming over." "Don't. I'm already in my car." Marcus arrived at Daniel's apartment, the apartment Amanda had already vacated, with pizza and beer. He didn't ask questions, just sat with Daniel in silence until Daniel was ready to talk. "She planned it for months," Daniel said finally. "Every detail. She knew exactly what she was doing. She's a monster. She thinks she's pragmatic. She wanted more. I didn't give it to her, so she found someone who would. Derek's a snake. Derek's successful. That's all that matters to her." Daniel opened a beer. "My parents died, Marcus, and I spent 3 days helping her plan the ceremony that would destroy me. She knew they died. She sent flowers to their house, and she still went through with it." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "What did the lawyer want?" "Will reading tomorrow, estate stuff. I don't even know what they had. They always lived simply. Dad was an architect like me. Mom taught music. They had their house, some savings. I'll probably inherit enough to bury them and pay off my student loans. That's something. It's nothing compared to what I lost today. Daniel's voice cracked. 15 years, Marcus. 15 years of loving someone who was measuring my worth by my bank account the whole time. They drank in silence. Outside, the city hummed with Friday night energy. Inside, Daniel felt hollowed out, empty, broken in ways he didn't know he could be broken. His phone buzzed. A text from Derek. I know this is hard, but Amanda and I want to move forward as friends. She still cares about you. We both do. Let's talk next week about the Jenkins project buyout. Daniel deleted it. Another text, this time from Amanda's mother. I'm sorry it happened this way, but Amanda has always known what she wants. I hope you can be happy for her. He turned off his phone. Marcus stayed until 3 a.m, then crashed on the couch. Daniel lay in bed, the bed he'd shared with Amanda for 15 years, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of public humiliation and private grief crushing him simultaneously. Tomorrow he'd bury his parents. Tonight he buried his marriage. He didn't cry. He couldn't. The shock was too complete, too overwhelming. He just lay there feeling nothing and everything, wondering how his life had collapsed so completely in 3 days. David Morrison's law office was in downtown Seattle, occupying the top floor of a building Daniel's father had designed 30 years ago. Daniel noticed this as he entered, feeling the ghost of his father's aesthetic in every line and angle. His parents had been in his life 3 days ago. Now they were gone, and he was here to divide up whatever small estate they'd left. David greeted him with surprising formality. Daniel, thank you for coming. Please sit. The conference room was larger than necessary for an estate reading. David had 3 associates with him, all looking serious, professional, and oddly deferential. Before we begin, David said, I need to ask, are you aware of your parents' financial situation? They lived modestly. Dad's practice was successful but not huge. Mom taught piano. They owned their house outright. Maybe $500,000 in assets total? David's expression was strange. Daniel, your parents were worth considerably more than that. What do you mean? David slid a folder across the table. Your father, Thomas Harper, was one of the founding investors in Chen & Associates Architecture. He provided the initial capital that allowed Derek Chen to start the firm 20 years ago. In exchange, he took a 40% ownership stake. Daniel's world tilted. What? Your father never told you because he believed in letting Derek build the company without interference. He was a silent partner, but he owned 40%. Your mother owned another 10% that Derek's father signed over to her as thanks for introducing them. Together, your parents owned half of Chen & Associates. The room spun. Daniel gripped the table. That's not possible. Derek built that company. He always said, Derek built it with your father's money and mentorship. Your father designed the firm's signature approach to sustainable architecture. He just let Derek take public credit because he preferred working independently. David opened another folder. Chen & Associates is now valued at $800 million. Your parents' 50% stake is worth $400 million. Add their other investments, properties, and assets, and your total inheritance is $553 million. Daniel couldn't breathe. $553 million. Yes, David's voice was gentle. Your parents lived modestly by choice. They believed in building wealth quietly. Your father's philosophy was that money should be a tool, not an identity. He didn't want you growing up entitled or pressured by wealth. He planned to tell you everything when you turned 40. He thought you'd be mature enough then to handle it wisely. But they died. Yes, and now everything transfers to you, including the controlling vote on Chen & Associates' board of directors. Derek Chen owns 40%. You own 50%. The remaining 10% is distributed among minor investors. Daniel's mind raced. Derek, Amanda, the vow renewal, the public humiliation. They thought he was nothing. They thought he had nothing. Does Derek know about my parents' stake? No. Your father structured the ownership through holding companies to protect his privacy. Derek knows there are silent investors, but he doesn't know who they are. As of today, you can reveal yourself or remain anonymous. When did my parents make their will? They updated it 6 months ago. Your mother had a health scare. They wanted everything in order. David hesitated. Daniel, I have to ask. I heard about what happened yesterday at your ceremony. It's all over the internet. Yes, it is. David's voice hardened. Your father would be furious. He trusted Derek. He believed in him. This betrayal would have devastated him. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. His parents were gone. His marriage was destroyed. His business partner had stolen his wife and humiliated him publicly. And now he owned the company Derek thought he'd built alone. What are my options? David smiled grimly. You have many. You could expose Derek's lies about being self-made. You could fire him from his own company. You could sell your shares and walk away rich. You could destroy everything he's built. He paused. Or you could do what your father would do. Something strategic, something purposeful, something that builds rather than destroys. I need time to think. Of course. But Daniel, Derek is planning to take the company public next year. He's positioning himself as the sole visionary founder. If that happens before you reveal your ownership, untangling the lies becomes much more complicated. How long do I have? Weeks, maybe a month. Daniel stood. The room felt too small, too warm. $553 million. Half ownership of Derek's company. Everything Derek had built on his father's foundation while sleeping with his wife. I'll be in touch, Daniel said. Outside, Daniel walked through the city his father had helped design, seeing his father's buildings everywhere. Monuments to a man who'd achieved greatness quietly while letting others take credit. He thought about Amanda's words at the vow renewal. I married potential. I got mediocrity. She'd married legacy. She just hadn't known it. Daniel spent the next week in a strange suspended reality. His parents' funeral was small, private, attended by people he didn't know. His father's silent business partners, his mother's former students who'd become famous musicians, investors his parents had quietly supported. They told him stories about Thomas and Eleanor Harper, stories of generosity, strategic investment, quiet mentorship. Your father funded my first restaurant, one man said, never asked for recognition. Just believed in my vision. Your mother paid for my Juilliard tuition, a cellist told him. I didn't even know who she was. The scholarship just said, anonymous believer in beauty. Daniel realized he'd never really known his parents. He'd seen their modest house, their simple car, their quiet life. He'd never seen the empire they'd built, the lives they'd touched, the legacy they'd created in shadow. The video of his public humiliation had gone viral. Entitled Wife Divorces Humble Architect was the headline on most sites. Comments were split, some sympathizing with Daniel, others defending Amanda's right to want more from life. Daniel didn't read them. He had Marcus change his passwords and hide his phone. Derek called 3 times. Daniel didn't answer. Amanda texted, I know you're hurting, but Derek and I are moving forward. We're getting married next month. Small ceremony, family only. I wanted you to know, I hope someday you'll be happy for us. Daniel stared at the message for an hour. Next month. 6 weeks after destroying him publicly, 4 weeks after his parents died. They weren't even waiting. He called David Morrison. I want to stay anonymous for now, but I want to know everything about Chen and Associates. Every contract, every client, every financial detail. I want to understand what my father built. I'll have the files sent over. Daniel spent 2 weeks reading. His father's company was brilliantly structured, ethically managed, and creatively groundbreaking. Derek had good instincts, but every major innovation traced back to Thomas Harper's notes, suggestions, guidance. Derek had been the face. Thomas had been the mind. And Derek didn't even know it. Daniel found himself thinking about his father's approach, building without ego, investing without control, creating legacy through other people's success. It was the opposite of Derek's approach, which was all flash and positioning, all personal brand and public credit. Marcus came over with Thai food. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. You could destroy him. I could, but you won't. My father wouldn't. Daniel looked at his friend. But I'm not my father, and I'm tired of being the person everyone thinks they can dismiss. So what's the middle ground? Daniel smiled for the first time in weeks. I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Amanda's wedding invitation arrived 3 weeks after the vow renewal. It was elegant, expensive, everything she'd ever wanted. Daniel stared at it, reading the names. Amanda Foster and Derek Chen request the honor of your presence. Foster. She'd already changed back to her maiden name, erased 15 years in 3 weeks. The wedding was at the Olympic Hotel, the most exclusive venue in Seattle. Black tie, 200 guests. The invitation included a +1. Daniel called Marcus. Want to crash a wedding? Absolutely. They went shopping. Daniel bought a suit that actually fit his new reality. Tom Ford, perfectly tailored, expensive in a way that didn't scream but whispered. He got a haircut at the place Amanda had always said was too expensive. He bought shoes that cost more than his car payment. When Marcus saw him dressed, he whistled. You look like money. I'm starting to feel like it too. The day before the wedding, David Morrison called. Derek filed paperwork to take the company public. He's moving fast. If you're going to reveal your ownership, it needs to be soon. I'm going to the wedding tomorrow. That's bold. My father built that company. Derek's been lying about it for 20 years. Amanda left me because she thought Derek was self-made and I was nothing. I think it's time everyone knew the truth. Be careful, Daniel. Public revelations can backfire. So can public humiliations. But Amanda taught me the value of witnesses. Daniel's voice was hard. If she can divorce me in front of everyone, I can tell the truth in front of everyone. David was quiet. Then, your father would either be proud or horrified. I genuinely can't tell which. Me neither. I guess we'll find out. The Olympic Hotel ballroom was everything Amanda had dreamed of. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, a string quartet playing classical music. Daniel and Marcus arrived exactly on time, dressed impeccably, carrying the confidence of men who belonged. The usher checked their invitation without really looking at Daniel's face. They were seated toward the back, which was perfect. Daniel wanted to observe, to wait for the right moment. He watched Amanda float down the aisle in a dress that probably cost $50,000. Watched Derek beam at the altar, triumphant and proud. Watched Amanda's parents cry with happiness. Watched the same guests who'd witnessed his humiliation now celebrating his betrayers. The ceremony was traditional, elegant, quick. When the officiant said, "If anyone objects to this union, speak now," Marcus elbowed Daniel. Daniel shook his head. Not yet. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The crowd erupted. Amanda and Derek kissed, turned to face everyone, radiant with victory. The reception began. Cocktail hour, then dinner. Daniel and Marcus stayed quiet, invisible in the crowd. Daniel watched Derek work the room, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, telling the story of his self-made success to anyone who'd listen. I started Chen & Associates with nothing, Derek said to a group of investors. Built it from the ground up, pure vision and determination. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. Marcus put a hand on his arm. Easy. During dinner, Derek gave a toast. I want to thank everyone for celebrating with us today. Amanda and I have waited a long time for this. We both knew what we wanted, and we weren't afraid to reach for it. That's what life is about, having the courage to chase excellence, to build empires, to refuse to settle for mediocrity. The room applauded. Daniel saw several people glance his way, recognizing him now, whispering. Amanda gave her toast next. Derek taught me that life is too short to accept less than you deserve. He showed me what real ambition looks like, what real success feels like. I'm grateful every day that I had the courage to choose the life I wanted. More applause, more pointed looks at Daniel. After dinner, during dancing, Derek's father approached the microphone. I want to share a story about my son. 20 years ago, Derek came to me with a dream, an architecture firm that would revolutionize sustainable design. He had nothing but a vision. I couldn't fund it, but he didn't give up. He found investors who believed in him, and he built something extraordinary. That's my son, a man who makes something from nothing. The applause was thunderous. Derek stood, accepting the praise, his arm around Amanda. Daniel stood too. Marcus grabbed his arm. You sure? I'm sure. Daniel walked to the front of the room. The crowd quieted, confused. Amanda's face went white. Derek's smile froze. Sorry to interrupt, Daniel said, his voice carrying easily. I just wanted to share a story too, about those investors who believed in Derek. Derek's father looked confused. I'm sorry. Who are you? Daniel Harper. I was married to Amanda for 15 years, and my father was Thomas Harper, the man who gave Derek his start 20 years ago. The room went silent. My father invested $2 million in Chen & Associates in 2004, Daniel continued. He designed the firm's sustainable architecture methodology. He mentored Derek for a decade, and in exchange, he took a 40% ownership stake. Derek's face drained of color. That's not... It's documented. My father never told you who he was because he believed in letting you have the public credit. He was a silent partner, but he owned 40% of your company, Derek. My mother owned another 10%. Together, they owned half of everything you think you built alone. The crowd erupted in whispers. Derek stepped forward. This is insane. You're making this up. My parents died 3 weeks ago. I inherited their stake. As of today, I own 50% of Chen & Associates architecture. You own 40, which means I have controlling interest. Daniel's voice was calm, factual. Everything you've told people about being self-made was a lie. Every interview where you claimed to start with nothing was fiction. My father built this company. You were the face he put on it. Derek was shaking. You can't prove... David Morrison stepped forward from the crowd. I can. I'm Thomas Harper's attorney. I have all the documentation, the corporate filings, the investment contracts, the mentorship agreements, all of it. Amanda found her voice. Daniel, why are you doing this? Why here? Why now? Why? Daniel turned to her. You stood at our vow renewal and told 200 people I was mediocre. You said I had no ambition, no drive, nothing to offer. You divorced me publicly because you thought Derek was everything I wasn't. You wanted everyone to see you choose success over settling. I was my father's son, quiet, strategic, building legacy without ego. You looked at me and saw nothing because you measure worth in flash and status. You looked at Derek and saw everything because he's good at performance. Daniel's voice was steady, strong, but Derek built his empire on my father's foundation. Everything he has because my family gave it to him. And you left me for a man who's been lying about his success for 20 years. The room was frozen. Phones were out, recording. This would be viral by morning. Derek stepped forward, desperate. Daniel, we can talk about this. Privately, work something out. Like you and Amanda worked things out privately for 2 years, while I thought you were my friend? Daniel shook his head. No. You taught me the value of public moments. Amanda taught me the importance of witnesses. So here we are. What do you want? Derek's voice was tight. I want the truth told. I want my father's legacy acknowledged. I want the company he built to honor his values, not your ego. Daniel paused. And I want you to understand what it feels like to have your life exposed in front of everyone you know. Amanda was crying now. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about your parents. You didn't care to know. That's worse. Daniel looked at her directly. You wanted someone successful. Well, congratulations. You married a man whose success was built on my family's generosity, who's been lying to everyone, including himself, for 20 years. I hope he's everything you dreamed of. Daniel turned to leave. Derek grabbed his arm. You can't do this. You can't just destroy what I've built. I'm not destroying anything. I'm revealing what was always true. You built something real, Derek. You're talented, but you built it on my father's foundation, with my father's money, using my father's ideas. And you erased him from the story because it was easier to be self-made than grateful. What happens now? Derek's voice was broken. Now? Now we have a board meeting on Monday. We discuss the future of Chen & Associates. We decide if the company continues with you as figurehead or if we tell the full truth about who really built it. We decide if you can handle success with honesty instead of fiction. Daniel pulled his arm free and walked out of the ballroom. Behind him, chaos erupted. Shouting, crying, the sound of a wedding imploding. Marcus caught up with him in the lobby. That was the most savage thing I've ever witnessed. Was it too much? Honestly, it was perfect. Your dad would be proud. Daniel wasn't sure about that, but he felt lighter than he had in weeks. Not happy. The grief of his parents' death was still crushing, but clear, purposeful, no longer invisible. His phone was blowing up with messages, calls, emails. The video was already spreading. By tomorrow, the whole story would be everywhere. The architect who got divorced publicly, whose wife married his partner, who turned out to own the partner's company. But Daniel didn't care about the viral moment. He cared about something else. On Monday, Daniel walked into Chen & Associates for the first time in a month. The staff stared at him, the humiliated ex-husband who was apparently their majority owner. Derek was already in the conference room, looking haggard, defeated. The board meeting was tense. Derek tried to position it as a hostile takeover, but the documentation was clear. Thomas Harper had owned half the company. Daniel inherited it. The other board members, who'd been kept in the dark about the silent partners, were furious with Derek for the deception. "I didn't know," Derek kept saying. "Thomas never told me his real name. I thought he was just an investor." "You never asked," Daniel said quietly. "In 20 years, you never wondered who gave you $2 million and asked nothing in return. You never questioned who was sending you those design notes and strategy memos. You just took the credit and built your personal brand." The room was silent. "Here's what's going to happen," Daniel said. "The company issues a public statement acknowledging Thomas Harper as the founding investor and strategic architect of our methodology. We established the Thomas Harper Memorial Fund for young architects from modest backgrounds. We restructure the company values to reflect his philosophy, build legacy, not ego. And me?" Derek's voice was hollow. "You stay on as managing partner if you agree to public correction of your origin story. You're talented, Derek. You don't need to lie about being self-made, but you do need to tell the truth about who helped you." Derek looked at the table. "And if I refuse? Then I exercise my controlling vote, remove you from leadership, and we rebuild with someone who values honesty over optics." It wasn't even a choice. Derek agreed to everything. Over the next months, the story continued to spread. News outlets covered the vow renewal revenge saga. Some called Daniel vindictive. Others called him just. Most just called it the most dramatic real-life story of the year. Amanda reached out once through lawyers, trying to explain. Daniel didn't respond. She'd made her choice based on what she thought people were worth. Now she had to live with the reality of what she'd chosen. Derek and Amanda stayed married, but the shine was gone. Derek's reputation as a self-made entrepreneur was shattered. Amanda's social media, once full of luxury and celebration, went quiet. Daniel rebuilt his own practice, this time using his inheritance to fund innovative, sustainable architecture for underserved communities. He established his father's memorial fund. He invested in young architects the way his father had invested in Derek, quietly, strategically, building legacy through others' success. A year later, at his father's memorial fund's first scholarship ceremony, Daniel stood before 50 young architects from modest backgrounds and told them his father's story, the real story, about building without ego, about investing in others, about measuring success not by personal brand, but by collective impact. "My father taught me that true wealth isn't what you have," Daniel said. "It's what you build, not for yourself, for everyone." The audience applauded. Among them, Daniel saw faces that reminded him of his younger self, hungry for opportunity, full of potential, waiting for someone to believe in them. He thought about Amanda, about Derek, about the vow renewal that had destroyed him and rebuilt him simultaneously. He thought about his father's quiet empire, his mother's anonymous generosity, the legacy they'd built in shadow. And he realized that his ex-wife had actually done him a favor. By crushing him publicly, she'd forced him to discover who he really was. By choosing Derek's flash over Daniel's substance, she'd proven she'd never understood what mattered. Daniel had inherited $553 million, but what he'd really inherited was his father's wisdom. That the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so meaningful that the betrayal becomes irrelevant. He didn't crush Amanda at her wedding because he was cruel. He crushed her because he revealed the truth. And the truth was this: she'd traded a legacy for a lie, substance for flash, real wealth for performance. She'd gotten exactly what she thought she wanted and lost everything that actually mattered. That was enough.